Hello, welcome to this application brief on fatty acid methyl esters, otherwise known as FAMES. I'm Jonathan Smuts, and I'm an application scientist for VUV analytics. FAMES is an important parameter that's typically measured in the food industry, and in the media, probably the most notorious fat that we hear about is trans fat. But to limit to FAMES just to that category is not an accurate statement. In the food industry, it's very important also to know the content of saturated fat as well as the polyunsaturated fat. Food industry aside, FAMES has also become important in the petroleum industry when they use biodiesel. Here, the FAMES is made by taking animal fat or vegetable oil fat and esterifying it in the presence of a catalyst and an alcohol. And then they use that to blend into the petroleum diesel to make biodiesel blends. Obviously, in this industry, the restrictions placed on the fatty acid methyl ester quality is way different than from the food industry. But those are the two main industries where we look at FAMES content, is the food industry and the biodiesel industry. In FAMES analysis, the most popular technique that is used for the fatty acid profile is gas chromatography. Traditional detectors used with gas chromatography are FID because of the low noise and the large dynamic range. Also mass spec, because mass spec, when you use different derivatization techniques on the fatty acid, you can get additional information from the mass spectra. Both techniques though, when you're just looking at the fatty acid methyl ester, both techniques have a difficult time just looking at the methyl esters and distinguishing cis and trans because they are so similar. And if they are co-eluting, all bets are off. VUV is different in that it sees an actual difference in the cis and the trans VUV spectra. Not only that, VUV can tell the difference between saturate and unsaturated FAMES and also the degree of unsaturation. So when these different classes of fatty acids are co-eluting, it is a simple matter to deconvolve them, looking at the spectra and pulling them apart from the chromatographic peak so that you get two distinct peaks that you can quantify. When it comes to trans fat determination, the name of the game is selectivity, and what VUV analytics brings to the table is the distinction between cis and trans isomers in the VUV spectra. If we look at the simple monounsaturated cis isomer, it has a lambda max at around 180 nanometers, while the monounsaturated trans isomer has a lambda max around 186. If we look at the C18-2, the diunsaturates, the cis-cis isomer has a lambda max at around 185 nanometers, while the trans-trans isomer has a lambda max at around 188 nanometers. The two cis-trans, trans-cis isomers are actually identical to one another and lie in between those two extremes, the cis-cis and the trans-trans configurations. Likewise, for the C18-3s, the all-cis isomer, ALA, has a lambda max at around 188 nanometers, while the all-trans isomer has a lambda max at around 190 nanometers. And all the cis-trans combinations fall in between those extremes. So you can see how VUV spectra can tell you the difference between these different degrees of cis-trans configurations for C18-1s, C18-2s, and C18-3s. Some people might say that the degree of similarity might lead to a confusing identification, especially for the C18-3s. The similarity is becoming more and more alike. But the point is, at the end of the day, can you tell the difference between an all-cis isomer and something else that falls in the same class? And that is what VUV brings to the table. If we know that we have a C18-3 isomer, we can tell readily whether it is all-cis or not. And if it is not all-cis, it must contain a trans double bond and therefore must be trans fat and therefore must be reported. Thank you for listening to this application brief on FAMES. I hope you have enjoyed it. please feel free to look at my blog on VUV Analytics website. There are some blog entries there on fatty acid methyl esters. Also, there was a recent webinar that we did that is also available on the VUV Analytics website. And lastly, please, if you're at AOCS 2018 this year, I have a talk on Wednesday afternoon. Feel free to attend. It is dealing with the matter of trans fat determination and comparing GC-VUV with GC-FID.